Tonight we're talking about the first effort. I want to give a little background here before speaking about this first of the 12 efforts. Okay, so I guess before we get into that, excuse me, I'm a little bit remiss. Let's bring the palms together at the heart center, give them a good rub. Let's create some sacred space together. And we'll tune in tonight. Ad Gure Name. Ad Gure Name. Jugad Gure Name. Sat Gure Name. Siddhi Gurudeve Name. If you know it, wonderful. Chant with me. If you don't know it, just be in the chant with me. We'll chant together 3 times. Inhale to begin. Ad Gure Name. Jugad Gure Name, Sat Gure Name, Siddhi Gurudeve Name. Ad Gure Name, Jugad Gure Name, Sat Gure Name, Siddhi Gurudeve Name. Ad Gure Name, Jugad Gure Name, Sat Gure Name, Siddhi Gurudeve Name. Inhale deeply. Pause this breath. Draw your attention inward, coming fully present. And exhale. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm always thrilled and honored to speak about the 12 steps. Tonight, we're talking about the first effort. And in talking about the first effort, we'll have to talk about the first step. And I want to give the background and explain what I mean when I say that. So I'm going to give you the full background tonight. I would like you to have pen and paper always when you come to these sessions. The reason why is because taking notes or writing down downloads or notions that come to you is a really powerful thing. And I have filled up notebooks after notebook after notebook listening to teachers and presenters. And I've gone back through those notebooks and they have truly made a big difference in my comprehension and in my own personal development and growth. So I want to encourage that here when we meet on Monday night. So here's some information. Little history. In 1939, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous came out. 1939. And in that big book, there were 164 pages, which made up the program of the 12 steps. And then there were a whole bunch of stories, personal stories from members of Alcoholics Anonymous. The book was released that year. It was titled Alcoholics Anonymous. And in the preface of that book, it said, "We are 100 men and women who have recovered from the hopeless state of alcoholism." And the purpose of this book, I'm paraphrasing, the purpose of this book is to show you and to write about exactly how we recovered. So that book came out into a world in the United States in 1939 where there was no recovery. There had been no movement before this. Therapists, priests, doctors had tried to help people who were struggling with severe alcoholism and drug addiction, but most of those cases didn't recover. Every now and then there must be, in history, people who did recover somehow. But in the United States in 1939, there was, coming out of the Great Depression, tremendous alcoholism in our world without much of a solution. So the book comes out, and it's not surprising. There's this tremendous response to it. So much so that it was completely overwhelming to Bill W. and Dr. Bob, who had formed Alcoholics Anonymous. Completely overwhelming. They talk about in the book something like 8,000 responses coming in. If you had 8,000 emails, that would be a big deal. That would be incredibly stressful, I imagine, for you. But imagine 8,000 letters, each of which needs to be opened, each of which needs to be answered from people all over the country who were desperate to learn about this new program for getting over alcoholism. People who were stuck in alcoholism themselves were writing, but also their family members, their wives, their husbands, their children, their parents, etc., etc. So you have to just try to put yourself in the mindset in 1939 of this explosion onto the scene of a book that claims to be able to help people to recover from what previously had been hopeless, a hopeless state of alcoholism and addiction. Okay. It turns out that the information put out in that book actually works. Actually works. The people that go through the work, do the steps, are guided by a conscious guide through those steps, are able to recover in great, great percentages, like amazing, like it really works. And since 1939, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps behind Alcoholics Anonymous have been adopted and adapted into over 200 other anonymous programs. There's Al-Anon, there's Codependence Anonymous, there's Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Marijuana Anonymous, Chronic Pain Anonymous, Families Anonymous. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Anywhere a human being can get caught up, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, all of it. There's a 12-step program or a 12-step approach to just about every kind of problem that human beings get into. So what is really effective in my experience, what's really effective in the 12 steps is its stated purpose. Its stated purpose is what? To get sober? No. That's not the stated purpose of the 12 steps. Did you know that? Its stated purpose is to give the doer of these steps to create a spiritual experience for them, to build a bridge to a power greater than themselves, and to create in this person a spiritual experience. Now, over the years, some people have had a spiritual experience in doing the work of the steps, and some people haven't. And so the question always is, well, why do some people get it and some people don't? It's an interesting question and a very important one. We want to be able to look at any program and say, oh, this is a strength of this program. And this is a liability. This is a place where it could be made even stronger. And if we have the openness of mind and the openness of heart to approach the program of the 12 steps like that, and if you have worked the 12 steps and really gone through them, then you have an opportunity to make educated commentary about what your direct experience was. So the first thing I want to know is, in the room here, we have, maybe 230 people. How many people in the room have worked through all 12 steps of the 12-step program? Just curious. Okay, whole bunch of folks. Okay, some yeses, some nos. Yep. Okay. Yep, mostly yeses so far. A handful of no's. Okay, good. So I appreciate that. I get a sense of sort of what's going on here. So we have mostly yeses, say about 90% yeses of what I'm seeing, and 10%, maybe 15% no's. And a couple people sort of are in between. They've done some of them, but not all of them. Okay. So great. So what I want to explain to you if you're not aware, and if you if you're not aware of the work that I do, I know you're a member, and so you must be aware on some level. But I wrote a book. Where is it? It's here somewhere. It's called Recovery 2.0. Hang on. Is it over here? How embarrassing. Okay. I don't have my own book here. I have no one to blame but myself. I'll have to forgive myself right away. Oh, that was easy. So I wrote a book called Recovery 2.0. Now, Recovery 2.0 is called Recovery 2.0 for a reason. The 2.0 speaks to sort of that next level. So does that then mean that a newcomer to recovery cannot benefit from Recovery 2.0? That is not what that means. What the 2.0 means is this is a path, a way to walk down a path. The Recovery 2.0 philosophy can help you walk down a path that will lead all the way to the end of your life, till you can reach your destiny, reach fulfillment. It's all the way. And Recovery 2.0 encompasses, or it's part of it, is the 12 steps. And some people refer to the 12 steps as Recovery 1.0. I mentioned that in my book. And the entire second section of my book is about the 12 steps, but not just the 12 steps. It's about looking at the 12 steps in what I feel is a very helpful, open-minded kind of way. And the people who have read the book have felt that it was very helpful for them. At least that's the great majority of people that I hear from. I'm sure there's someone who read it who didn't like it, and I haven't heard too much of that. There's always somebody, if you write something, it doesn't resonate for them. But most of the people have read it and loved it and felt that it was helpful for them. The reason I'm giving you this history before we get into the first effort is because I consider the 12 steps to be a very, very important process. I think it's important that everybody go through it. I think it's important that everybody get a sponsor. I'm imagining somebody from this community, because the people in this community tend to have a common vocabulary, like-mindedness. We're into yoga and meditation, and we're into holistic lifestyle practices, and we want to live a great life in every way. We want to be healthy. And because those things are true for our community, if you haven't worked the 12 steps, I really want to encourage you to do it. And I'm going to build a bridge so you understand how we get from 12 steps to 12 efforts. So bear with me here. So what I'm telling you is the 12 steps work. I'm telling you that there may be some people who have trouble with their language. There may be some people who don't understand the concepts, and unfortunately, they don't get involved with a sponsor who can help them. There may be some people who come to it closed-minded. If you come to anything closed-minded, it's going to be difficult to learn and benefit. There may be some people who have negative experiences within 12-step fellowships, and that taints their experience of the 12-step universe. Some people I know have had negative experiences in 12-step fellowships, and that's prevented them from wanting to even do the 12 steps. And so they blew it off, which is sad. I understand it, but it's really missing something very important for us people in recovery, because the 12 steps really do work. So if you don't understand how they work, I'll simply say this. There is a need for more power that we experience when we're stuck in addiction. And the 12 steps describes a process for accessing more power. I'm going to leave it at that. And as you go through the process, the writing and the reading and the different things you have to do in the steps, there's prayer. It's very much a spiritual program. So this is not nobody shies away from the God thing or spirituality in the 12 steps, because that's central to it. A lot of people have religious prejudice. So if you come to the 12 steps with religious prejudice, that would be a reason why you wouldn't want to continue, because it could be off-putting for you. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that no matter what your reason is for not working the 12 steps, no matter what the hindrance is, no matter what the hesitation is, what's in the 12 steps, the truth that can be mined, the wisdom that can be mined, the experience that can be had by working the 12 steps is an amazingly powerful, incredible experience that's open to anyone that opens themselves to it. Okay. So over the years, I have been frustrated in speaking with many, many people, some of whom are in this room right now, who have said to me, I don't like the 12 steps. I don't want to follow the 12 steps. That's why I'm here at Recovery 2.0. Because to me, Recovery 2.0 is about yoga, and we don't have to do the 12 steps, and that's not my path. And I'm like, wait a minute. Let's get clear here for a minute. Nobody said you have to do the 12 steps. But nobody said you didn't have to. And what I mean by that is there are things in the 12 steps that come to you by working them that are going to be necessary along your path. So if you don't get those things from the 12 steps, I'm okay with that. But those things have to come from somewhere. They have to come from somewhere. What are those things that I'm talking about? The capacity, you must develop the capacity for rigorous self-honesty. You must develop the capacity for rigorous self-honesty. And it isn't easy, because when you come to sobriety or you come to recovery, at first, you may not be able to think so clearly. So in order to even be rigorously honest, you're going to have to clear away some of the toxicity and some of the confusion and some of the being out of alignment and out of balance for so long. You've lost your intuition in addiction. Any one of us can relate to that idea. Any one of us can relate to that idea. We've lost our intuition, and we're so toxic with drugs and alcohol when we're in those kinds of addictions, we can't think clearly. So just to become rigorously self-honest isn't like a decision, oh, I think today I'll become rigorously self-honest. It doesn't work like that. We have to embark on a pathway that leads us into practice and the experiences that come from being rigorously honest. And guess what happens? In early recovery, inevitably, we're going to have a moment, if we're aware, where we are not rigorously honest, where we lie, we tell a lie, we cheat, we steal, and we go into that moment of like shame and, oh my God, because you're aware now, right? You're sober and you're aware. Oh my God, there's that behavior. I feel shitty. What am I going to do? Well, you sit in that muck, and what you're told to do and what you've been trained to do by this point is you got to pick up the phone and call somebody in recovery and tell them the truth. You got to call your sponsor and tell them the truth, because this is the training. This is something that happens in a program where you have community and you have people and you have a guide, a sponsor, and you've got steps to follow which build upon principles like truthfulness. And so you see, if you haven't worked the 12 steps, I don't mind, but you got to get to rigorous honesty somehow. Got to do it. Got to do it. There needs to be that development. You have to be able to develop the capacity for rigorous self-honesty. That's an example of many traits that you're going to have to develop that are developed through the 12-step process. Another thing you have to develop is trust, because it's very likely that you've lost it. that you've lost trust of others, and that you even don't trust yourself. Because you've shown yourself through addictive behavior, wow, look how shitty I am. And it's not that you're a bad person. It's that you've been caught in a dis-ease called addiction. And that's how we behave in addiction. So if you haven't worked the 12 steps and you're here in Recovery 2.0 because you want some good juice here and you want to not have to work the 12 steps, I'm all right with it. But you are going to have to engage in a practice. You are going to have to engage in communication with a community, and I mean every day. You are going to have to not use drugs and alcohol on a one day at a time basis. And if your addictions are food or sex or the other ones, you're going to have to build a program around that. So please don't come to Recovery 2.0 and hide here. This is very important you hear me on this. Please don't hide here. If you have something troubling you in your heart, you've got to come out with it. You've got to work a program around it. And if you don't yet have a program, then I'm encouraging you to work the 12 steps. Now, the bridge from the 12 steps to the 12 efforts. How do we get there? All right. I've spoken to many people over the years who have been resistant, like some of you are, to working the 12 steps. I say, why are you resistant? I don't relate to the language. I can't do the God thing. I don't like that they refer to God as a he. It feels weird and culty to me. I went to some meetings and I didn't like it. I met some shitty people and they don't look happy and they drink coffee and they're overweight and they're unhealthy and I wasn't attracted to it. Okay, I understand all of those things. I understand all of those things. And so my response to that is, I get it. And so I want to help you with language. I want to help you with health. I want to help paint a picture for you of what recovery could be. If you work the 12 steps and you get free, you don't have to look like them. You don't have to be like them. You get to be like you. And what I want for you is I want you to be free. I want you to be free so badly that I've spent my life talking about it. Because that's how they helped me. They told me, just work these steps. Just work these steps. They kept telling me, and I was like, no, no, no. Why me? Why do I have to do this? Why doesn't everyone else have to do this? If this is so great, why do I have to do this? And the answer is because I had to do this. So I want to help you with language. Recovery 2.0 is here to show you how much fun this could be, to show you what health looks like. I take my health very seriously. I take my diet very seriously. I take exercise very seriously. I'm really into my yoga and meditation. I really love it. And you know what? I take my mental well-being very seriously. I'm 29 years sober. I'm dedicated to being on this path. And it has served me in the most beautiful way. And my life is beautiful. And I'm around a ton of people, including many of you, who also have these wonderful lives as the result of the steps and Recovery 2.0. And so what I'm trying to do, generally speaking, is inspire you. I want you to be inspired. And so here we are. So the 12 efforts got written in Costa Rica last year when I was there. I said, enough. Let me change some of the wording of the 12 steps, as audacious as that sounds, as unthinkable as that sounds. Why? Because I want to improve upon the 12 steps? No. Because I want to make the 12 steps accessible for more people. I want to make the 12 steps accessible for more people. People who think like we do. There's so many millions of us, actually. And there's some people out there that won't approach the 12 steps with the normal language just because that language is off-putting to them. And I say, don't let that prevent you from getting into the work of developing things like rigorous self-honesty. And you don't, just before I get into the first effort, another thing is you get to clean the slate. You get to look inside of your own heart, your own experience. You get to be honest with yourself and say, here are my strengths. Here are my liabilities. Here are the things that I've done. This is the resentment I've held on to. Here's why I did that. Here's the pain I've caused other people. You get to fix all that. You get to drop the weight of the world. You get to be free. Really, really free. And you get to right the wrongs that you've done, or to move beyond the mistakes that you've made. And you get to grow and you get to learn. And this is a waking up, but it's also a growing up. And it's all promised. And it always shows up if we, in earnest, work these steps or these efforts, if you like. It's just so incredible, and it's so freeing, it's so liberating, and it's so, so powerful. So I simply wrote the 12 efforts to create access points into the work that's available within the 12 steps. So tonight we're talking about the history behind this, and we're talking about the 12 efforts. We're talking about the 12 efforts. So the first effort, I'll just read it to you. We admitted that we had been stuck in patterns of belief and behavior that no longer served us. That's the first part. We admitted that we had been stuck in patterns of belief and behavior that no longer served us, and that we were cut off from the power of consciousness. Okay, why did I write this? The original step from Alcoholics Anonymous is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, I got no problem with that wording myself personally. The reason I brought about the phrase, we had been stuck in patterns of belief and behavior that no longer served us, is because for me, it really unpacks that idea of, wow, stuckness. I had been stuck in a belief system. My belief system, when I was still using at the end in particular, was I can't live without this. Who will I be with? The only people I want to hang out with are people who also do drugs. I don't have a community outside of that. I'm going to be lonely if I give this up. And more than that, I'm scared. I'm scared to live a life without drugs and alcohol. Can anybody in the room here relate to that? Can anybody here relate to that? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, not fun. I'm so scared. And so all of that was what I was believing. I was stuck in that pattern of belief. And because of that, I behaved a certain kind of way. I behaved a certain kind of way. How did I behave? Well, number one, I used drugs and alcohol. Those were part of my daily ritual, my daily routine. I used drugs and alcohol because of my belief system. So my behaviors with people, like for example, I had the opposite of rigorous honesty. I had rigorous dishonesty. I was rigorously dishonest in my addiction. I lied every time. I mean, I lied every day, right? For sure. I don't have to think about this. I know that to be a fact. It wasn't that I was a liar. It's that I lived at a level of consciousness called addiction. Let's call addiction a level of consciousness. Now you're understanding why I wrote this first effort. Addiction I consider to be a level of consciousness. And so recovery is to elevate our consciousness. So now you see, going back to the first effort, We admitted we had been stuck in patterns of belief and behavior that no longer served us. Why did I say that? Why did I say that no longer served us? Because at some point, our addictive behavior did serve us. If you're like me, so my story is like when I first smoked marijuana, for example, smoked cannabis, I liked the feeling very, very much. When I drank a bottle of red wine in France, I liked the feeling. I liked the warmth that it brought into my body. I liked the way that all of a sudden I felt more comfortable about myself, that my anxiety seemed to go down. I appreciated that. And so it served me. That behavior, when I was a young man in that body, in that mind, that behavior served me. And because I didn't develop other behaviors and other ways of learning and growing, I came to depend upon that behavior, those behaviors, those rituals. And because I became to depend on them again and 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 again, I built a very, very powerful belief system. And I built a habit and ultimately an addiction around substances. It's very simple. But later on, because I built that addiction and that dependency, I noticed that certain things were happening in my life that I didn't want to have happen. I was getting into trouble. I was unable to complete tasks. I was upsetting a lot of people. I was feeling judgmental and resentful and angry much of the time. So through my early recovery, I also was carrying all of those things. The thing that made me get sober was that I had been so cornered by these patterns of belief and behavior that no longer served me that I had to change. I was forced to change. But I think that one of the hardest things about changing our life is that we remember when it worked. God, this used to work. I used to feel great when I did this. But I don't feel great anymore when I do this. But I've been doing this for so long. I'm scared to step into the unknown. I'm scared to step into a life without it. And we do this with relationships also, by the way. When we stay in relationships way, way too long, when we know it's not working, but we stay anyway. And we remember how it was. Well, this was so beautiful before. We loved each other so much, or it worked between us. You know, and it's just very, very painful and very difficult when we get into those states. So I wrote that aspect of the first effort, that we had been stuck in patterns of belief and behavior that no longer served us. It's an indication that at one point, something did serve us. These what became an addictive behavior was a friendly behavior at some other time, but it stopped. So we admit that. The first effort for us to be on this path of discovery, Recovery 2.0, the path of discovery, Recovery 2.0, the path of discovery, constantly moving forward and learning, constantly discovering new things about ourselves, constantly learning and growing and growing up and waking up. That's why we're on the path of discovery. The first thing we do is we admit, wow, you know, I've been stuck in a pattern of belief and behaviors around that pattern of belief that no longer served me. Okay, let's go to the second part of the effort. Second part of the effort is, and so we admitted that, we also admitted that we were cut off from the power of consciousness. Now that's a heavy statement. Let's unpack it. What do I mean by that? The power of consciousness. Some people might say, oh, you're talking about God. Okay. Some people might say, oh, that sounds like higher power. Okay. Some people might say, that sounds like what I refer to as great spirit. Okay. Some people might say, when you talk about consciousness, to me, it sounds like intelligence, that I was cut off from the power of intelligence. Okay. Some people might say, oh, to me, that sounds like what you're saying is you're cut off from your higher mind, your intuitive mind. Okay. Some people might say, well, it sounds like what you're saying is like what they talk about in the 12 steps when they say being cut off from the sunlight of the spirit. Okay. There are a lot of ways to work with this statement. The thing that I think is the most important is to understand that we're talking about power and empowerment. That if Recovery 2.0 is to be successful, if recovery of any kind is to be successful, it has to empower you. Coming from addiction is such a disempowered place. We're disempowered in so many ways. And in the 12 steps, we talk about being powerless. Here, we're not talking about being powerless. We are talking about for temporarily being cut off from the power. And the power is the power of consciousness. Consciousness in the quantum physical world, we're talking about consciousness in terms of a consciousness that runs through the very thread of the universe. Scientific. We're not even talking about some concept of something you have to believe any longer. We're actually talking about something that is scientifically proven, that there is an awareness, a consciousness that underlies everything. And so we're working with connecting with the power of consciousness when we move from addiction into recovery. We're also working with connecting and accessing to the consciousness within each one of us. Now, if this consciousness is divine, if this consciousness is everywhere, is literally thread through everything, it's also thread through you. You have a conscious mind. You have a mind, or you access a mind. You have consciousness. Ask yourself right now in this moment, are you aware of watching me in this moment? Ask yourself, are you aware right now of watching me and listening to me? Okay, that's your consciousness paying attention to what you're doing. It's the part of you that's watching you. It's the part of you that's thread through you. And it's the part of you that connects to the greater consciousness in all things. So when we talk about reconnecting to the power of consciousness, or that we were cut off from the power of consciousness, we're basically saying that we went into a state of unconsciousness. We went to a state of unconsciousness. And here in the very first effort, what we're doing is we're admitting it. Yeah, wow. When I got sober originally in 1989, when I got sober that first time, I could easily tell you that I had been in a state of abject unconsciousness, not able to pay attention, autopilot, engaging in behaviors that I didn't want to do, facing consequences that I didn't want to have, breaking every promise that I made, telling lies right and left. And I did that until it almost killed me. And when I found recovery and I admitted that I was powerless over addiction, it meant to me that I didn't have enough power to solve this problem on my own in my current situation. That I somehow had engaged in life in such a way that I found myself to be powerless And that's the first thing that I had to grasp in order to have any progress. That I actually had a relationship with drugs and alcohol that made me powerless. That I had a relationship that turned me into a powerless being. That relationship took away my free will, my power of choice, blocked me from my power, blocked me from the power, blocked me from the energy of the universe. Another way I can break this down for you is to say, if you don't understand what I'm saying about blocking me from the energy of the universe, do you believe that you get energy from the food that you eat? Of course you do. You know that you need to eat food in order to get energy. That food, until you eat it, is not you. It's coming from the universe. Somebody grew it. Somebody picked it. The sun and the elements, the soil and the earth and the water got together and created a tomato for you. Created a cucumber for you. Created lettuces for you. Created everything for you. You take that energy in. Now, if you're eating really, really bad food, like I was in my addiction, the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst, then you're not taking great energy from the universe. You're making terrible choices. And you're not bringing power in. You're further disempowering yourself. That's just an example. So when we talk about powerlessness and reaching out into the universe and drawing power from a power greater than yourself, of course, in the original 12 steps, they're talking about God. And that's fine, as long as you're able to work with the word God. And if you're not able to work with the word God, then we're going to use another word. And in this case, we're going to use the universe or consciousness. God to me is no longer a problem, that word. I love the word. Generator, organizer, destroyer. Generator, organizer, destroyer, G-O-D. Works for me. It's the consciousness in everything. In you, in me, and everyone else, and everything else. It generates everything. It organizes everything. It destroys everything. It alone has the power to do that. We do not have the power to do that. What we have is we have energy. We have energy, and we can use energy in the ways that we do. The first thing we do in the 12 steps or in the 12 efforts is we have to make an admittance. We have been stuck. We've been believing things and acting in ways that no longer serve us. We have been cut off from power. We cut ourselves off. And we have to admit it. We have to understand it. And down to the very cell of your body, you have to understand this. Because if you doubt what I'm saying, and you don't understand this concept, and you think that you can engage in drugs and alcohol again with everything that you've learned, if you think you can do that and somehow get away with it, then you probably are going to try at some point in your life. And then you're going to drop back into behaviors that no longer serve you. Now, are there exceptions? Of course. Of course there are. Some people get sober. Later on, they go back to drinking or drugging. I can't tell you what it's like to be in their shoes. They seem to be okay. If you want to try that, I strongly encourage against it. The reason I bring it up is to say, I know for me, I'm not sober because I have to be. And maybe that's what separates Recovery 2.0 from everything else. Is ultimately, we want to move beyond staying sober because we have to be, to being on a path of recovery and discovery because we choose to be. And on this particular path of recovery and discovery, what we do together, it does not include drugs and it does not include alcohol in the bigger sense, right? Some of us drink a little caffeine now and then. Okay, that's a drug. I get that. Some of us still smoke cigarettes now and then. I get it. But typically, you understand what I'm talking about. We're not doing drugs and we're not drinking. We're looking at our life and we're asking ourselves questions like, how can I engage in life in the best way? What am I going to do today to have so much fun? Who do I get to be with today that I can uplift and have fun with? What creative project would I like to get into? What am I going to do today to make my body healthier? What yummy smoothie am I going to make this morning in my morning smoothie? What practice am I engaged in yoga or meditation or qigong or tai chi or martial arts or yoga or athletics or training or hiking or biking or tennis or this or that or the other thing that makes me feel great? How do I get to engage in this world in a way that makes me feel alive and fulfilled, joyful and free? That is what the foundation of the 12 steps with the Recovery 2.0 yoga, meditation, philosophy, and practices, that's what did it for me. Now, I'm not saying that this is the right thing for everybody, by no means. But here's the thing about Recovery 2.0. We welcome everything that works. Everything. You could say to me, I went out on the golf course and I figured out a way to play golf that somehow builds my joy and adds to my recovery. And I would say, phenomenal, amazing. I'm so glad you found that for yourself. Some people say, Tommy, I'm really not into the yoga or your kind of yoga, And I'm like, okay, no problem. What are you doing to work on the body-based trauma, the body-based toxicity? What are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, for me, I get into training. I'm like, great. How are you working on your mind? They're like, I'm struggling there. I'm like, great. Let's go back to yoga. Yoga is meditation. Yoga is meditation. Let's work on the mind. Let's get a practice of yoga and meditation going, and let's work on the mind. Okay? Someone's saying we suffer from boredom. Here's what I have to say about boredom. Boredom is fantastic. Lean into your boredom. Sit there with your boredom, because boredom is never boredom. What is boredom? Boredom is never boredom. Boredom is, I'm uncomfortable. And I don't know what to do about it. So I feel bored. I feel like I need a distraction. I need something to do. That's boredom. So what we do is we sit still, we develop a meditation practice. And we also talk to people about it. And we do other things which also are engaging and interesting. And so we start to plug into the world in a way, and we're no longer bored. So if you find yourself bored a lot, it's just an indication that there's something asking to come through you. And it's not yet being allowed to come through. So sit and figure out what that is. It's so important. When we sit in meditation, we often struggle at first because our mind is so busy, and we might be taken aback, like, my God, I'm so shocked at how active my mind is. I don't seem to be able to calm down. And at first we can feel that way in meditation. But the meditative process is allowing us to sit long enough that the mind starts to calm. And underneath that, we get into our being. We get to touch upon our consciousness. And in that practice of getting underneath the thoughts and connecting with being, we begin to start to feel joy. Not the joy that comes from doing, but the joy that comes from being. And once you taste that, it's irresistible. It's irresistible. You know how to pass time without doing anything. You're perfectly comfortable with yourself. And it's a state of being that is open and available to you. Absolutely. Okay. Ending with a Recovery 2.0 prayer. Inhale to begin. Universe, put me in the places you want me to be, with the people you want me to be with, doing the things you want me to do. Thank you for the joys and the challenges of my life. Amen. And Satnam. Love to all of you, peace to all of you, blessings to all of you. Take advantage of what's here and be free. Love you. See you next time. And Satnam.